If you're just joining us on YouTube, we will be starting the Benicia Candidates Forum for City Council at 6 o'clock.
Tom, don't look so excited, man.
Now you are live now. Now's not the time to do the hard rock song.
Oh, cool.
I was just looking for some John Philip Sousa on my iPhone, but I couldn't find anything, which says a lot about what my music tastes are, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, are those all of your degrees on the wall back there?
That's good.
Well, yeah, if you include bartending school, and, golf.
It's like there's always been 7 degrees of, but
Stop it. I shouldn't have brought that up. Every time I bring that up, I get embarrassed, because someone says, don't you just stop with one and just move on with your life?
Aren't some of them carries? Those are carries too, and right?
Actually, yeah, they are carries, and one of the associates too.
Yeah, I've looked at them.
Wow, you're the only person that's ever looked at him.
Oh yeah,
yeah, I've looked at
them. Fun. Something to put on your wall. I have a friend.
Otherwise, it's just holes.
I have a friend who puts them in the bathroom.
I'll take that under consideration, but I'm not quite ready for that yet.
That's a clear no.
A soft no.
Oh, okay.
So Trevor, what's on the wall behind you? What are those pictures of?
So you guys are in my office. This is the Flatiron Building, New York. I'm a kind of a classic car junkie, so I got some classic car memorabilia. Let's see if I can turn you guys. I got my Benicia flag up there on the wall, a couple of hubcaps, some art. Yeah.
Well, that's good. What about you? And you have your guitar, Tom.
Yeah, and below it is the signed autographed album cover for Hotel California by the Eagles. And below it is the signed, this is the Moody Blues, their Questions of Balance. And behind that is our children's. I'm a rock and roll memorabilia collector. An aficionado.
Niles, what's that picture behind your head?
It's something that I inherited at some point in the past. I have no idea where it came from or why I even put it up there. It's just.
You like the colors?
There's an empty space, and yeah, exactly, right.
Now, you got to work on the response, man. It should be like, so I went to this hotel once, and
yeah, right.
There was a picture.
I'm kind of curious. What are you doing? Are you casing our various places?
Yeah, I think so.
Is there something I should know about your burglary history here?
It's called Killing Time.
Oh, okay.
Probably start though.
We're getting to know one another a little bit. In a
It's 6 o'clock, I think.
Oh no, it's 5:59 according to both my watches.
Oh, okay. I'm always fast. You're right. That's what the computer says.
I put on both my computer and my cell phone, so. And my Fitbit is always 5 minutes behind, so that way I'm always late.
So can we tell how many people are watching YouTube? We have any idea?
Yeah, it'll show on the YouTube side.
Susan just reported 20 in chat.
It's 6 o'clock, so now we will start. Good evening. And welcome to our Benicia City Council and Mayoral Candidates Forum. My name is Gail Vaughn, past president of the local League of Women Voters and the coordinator for this event. Our co-sponsors for this forum are Benicia Vallejo American Association of University Women, AAUW, and Carquinez Village. The League of Women Voters is an organization of women and men that is nonpartisan, community-based, and is organized at the local, state, and national levels. Simply put, our purpose is to register voters, provide them information, and get out the vote. The League of Women Voters of Solano County does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The purpose of the candidate forums is to allow voters an opportunity to hear candidates discuss issues, stimulate public interest in the election, and to provide the candidates an opportunity to engage with their constituents. Tonight, we have all of the candidates for City Council and Mayor participating in this forum. These candidates have been verified that they will attend and have agreed to the rules for participation with signed documents. Their views expressed this evening by candidates are theirs and not the views of the League of Women Voters. This candidate forum is being held as a Zoom meeting and is being broadcast live on YouTube while being recorded. If you are on YouTube right now, please feel free to put questions for the candidates into the chat box. Questions submitted will be screened and sorted for appropriateness, relevance, and redundancy. Questions of a personal or inflammatory nature will be discarded. These questions, as time permits, will be forwarded to the moderator of the event. The recording of this forum will be posted on the League of Women Voters Solano YouTube's channel with a link to our website. The copyright for this forum belongs to the League of Women Voters Solano County, which reserves all rights to the recording of this format. No portion of this contents of this format may be reproduced or otherwise used without prior written consent from the League of Women Voters. No portion of this recording may be used to promote or oppose any candidate or used to imply that the League of Women Voters endorses any candidate. If the recording of this forum is to be used, it must be used in its entirety. A virtual event like this takes a lot of planning and a lot of people behind the scenes. I would like to thank Niles Betters, League of Women Voters President, moderator Julie Hartford, League of Women Voters Vice President, Sandy Curry, Craig Patterson, Rami Muth, Ali Desiderio, sorry, Ali, I always say it wrong. Our timer, Barbara Houseman, our chat manager, and Susan Newhouse, our technical coordinator and president of Carquinez Village. Our co-sponsors have representatives here as well. Janet Leventhal is the president of the Benicia AAUW, and Diane Kachette is the vice president of Carquinez Village. Jan, would you like to give us a brief description of AAUW?
The American Association of University Women, officially founded in 1881, is a nonprofit organization that advances equity for women and girls through advocacy, education, and research. Besides voter education and getting out the vote, our branch priority is selecting middle school girls for our one-week summer STEM camp. Girls are recommended by their 7th grade science teachers and, if selected, receive a scholarship to our camp, which features women professionals as teachers and mentors. The camp introduces the girls to the many choices available in science and technological careers. This coming year, we plan a virtual week-long summer camp. Please contact us or your 7th grade science teacher if you have a girl to recommend. We also have monthly meetings and events discussing current issues and other topics of special interest to the group. Members have the opportunity to join various interest groups or to form new groups. We have a website, beniciavallejo-ca.aauw.net, or find us on Facebook.
Thank you, Jan. Diane, would you like to explain the purpose of Carquinez Village?
Yes. Carquinez Village opened its virtual doors in April 2017. Now we have over 100 members and over 60 volunteers in Benicia and Vallejo. A nonprofit 501c3 corporation, Carquinez Village is not a place or a building. Rather, it is a volunteer-run organization that provides a range of supportive services to our senior members. Such services can bring peace of mind to our members and help to keep them comfortable in the place they call home. Also, we all need meaning, human connection, and engaging activities, especially during this stressful pandemic. To engage our members' minds, we offer a calendar of stimulating activities now taking place on Zoom. To read more about Carquinez Village, please go to our website, carquinezvillage.org, or visit us on Facebook. We hope you will find this forum informative and enjoyable. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Now, without further ado, let me turn this over to our moderator, Niles Metters.
Thank you, Gail. My name is Niles Metters, and I'll be your moderator for this forum, which is co-sponsored, as you heard, by the League of Women Voters, Benicia Vallejo American Association of University Women, and the Carquinez Village. I'd like to welcome the City Council candidates who are with us this evening. Mr. Terry Scott, Mr. Trevor Masensky. Did I pronounce that correctly, Trevor?
It's all right. No one never. It's Masensky. It's fine. Though.
Masensky, okay.
Yeah.
And Mr. Tom Campbell. All verified candidates were invited and are here this evening. We appreciate their taking the time to appear on this forum. This event is a forum, not a debate. The difference is that in a forum, each candidate will be asked the same questions. They will not speak to each other, but rather they will speak to you, the audience. We have asked the candidates not to refer to one another, and we ask they not mention endorsements or any particular affiliations, but to focus on what they will bring to the position of City Council member. The candidates will be given 2 minutes for their opening statements and 1.5 minutes to answer the questions. Following the prepared questions, we will ask questions submitted by our YouTube audience via the YouTube chat. For those questions, candidates will have 1 minute per question. The order in which the candidates will make their opening statements has been decided by the League and follows the order in which they are listed on the ballot. After their opening statements, they will be given the questions in an alternating order. At the conclusion of the question and answer section, candidates will make closing statements in reverse order. We've asked them to give you, the audience, a way to contact them should you have any further questions. And we will begin the opening statements with Terry Scott, followed by Trevor Masensky and Tom Campbell. Trevor, over to you.
Trevor
Or
or
you.
Terry?
Terry, go for it, bud.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Terry.
Okay. Terry, I'm Terry Scott. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, Carquinez Village for providing the opportunity for this public forum, which will most likely be the last time all of our candidates are together in a forum. I'm running for City Council because I believe it's time to change the way we look at tomorrow's questions using solutions from yesterday. The answers of the past will just not work given our uncertain future. Turbulent times require answers to problems we never would have or could have expected. COVID-19 has shaped and reshaped the world. Now we must reshape the part of the world that means most to us, our citizens. My vision for Benicia speaks directly to the potential of our community. My vision for Benicia begins with the understanding that we are a historic small town that embraces small town core values, a small town that respects its heritage yet is willing to embrace change. A small town that needs to be financially stable, which enables all of us to enjoy this quality of special life we have here in Benicia. One that celebrates environmental stewardship, diversity and equality, effective city governance, including strong safety departments. By now, some of you know me as a candidate. Some of you also know me as the art guy. I'm chair of the Arts and Culture Commission and Public Art. But I'm not just the art guy. I'm a futurist working for Fortune 500 companies. I spent decades in corporate America. I've managed teams of over 700 with a budget of over $1.7 billion. I've owned and operated a family business, small business. I'm a husband of 44 years, a father of 3 boys, have 2 grandkids. I've earned my undergraduate degree at Kent State University, and I attended Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. When I succeeded because I listened. When I failed, it was because of a failure. So I believe it's time for some bold new thinking, and I believe we need to turn to how we can look at things from a different perspective. Thank you.
Next is, this time, Trevor Masensky.
There you go.
There we go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Trevor Masensky. I'm running for Benicia City Council to help strengthen the economic future of our city while maintaining fiscal responsibility, preserving our historic roots and quality of life, and ensuring that we can maintain a safe community that has access to great public education. I commit to representing Benicia residents with integrity, respect, and transparency, with a hope that all those items actually invite additional civic engagement into our community. As a city commissioner, I've served in a number of different capacities and roles for our city. I'm currently the vice chair on our planning commission. I've previously served on our Historic Preservation Review Commission, the Soul Trans Public Advisory Committee, and our Refinery Community Advisory Panel. The thing about these roles is they've actually helped me to understand a lot about our city and the challenges that we're going to be facing. A little bit about me personally. I'm a father of 3 kids, Drake, Nash, and Monroe. I'm a husband to my wife, Kim, for over 13 years. I'm a local coach for both basketball and baseball. I'm a volunteer. I'm a urban planner, a college educator, and fortunately, I've actually been able to teach environmental impact assessment methodologies at UC Davis. I went to Davis for my undergrad, so go Aggies. I got a bachelor's degree in environmental policy analysis and planning. I have a master's degree from Johns Hopkins University in environmental policy. And in short, as an urban planner, I've dedicated my entire career to helping solve some of California's most complex challenges. So having close to 20 years in consulting with cities and counties all across the state, I hope to bring that experience right here to Benicia. Thank you and look forward to your questions this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Masensky. And next is Tom Campbell.
Well, I want to thank the League and the AAUW and the Carquinez Village for having this forum. Hopefully it'll be kind of fun. Over the years, I've started or been involved in projects that preserved our open spaces, improved open government, campaign reform, and protected our climate. I voted against water rate increases on oil trains. I voted for helping small businesses, improving our roads, increasing Benicia's water supplies, protecting its air quality, and even face masks. You know, I was on city councils that built the environmentally award-winning community center, the skateboard park, put in $13 million of solar panels to power the city's public works. I was also on a council that helped clean up the munitions in the Turtle area so Water's End could be built. These are just some of the projects I worked on. But for me, it's always been protect Benicia's finances. I help keep our services intact and bring Benicia back from the dot-com bust, the 9/11, and the 2008 recessions. After those recessions, I led councils to set policies to double our reserves, update budgets quarterly, not yearly, and approach spending more cautiously. This is my third major recession since being on the council. My goal for the next several years is to get us out of the COVID recession and bring us back to the life we had before the pandemic. As for degrees, I'm getting too much static about, you know, all the degrees I have. So let's just say I got a couple so that I kind of know what I'm doing when it comes to everything from basic sciences to business. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. In Benicia, our city council is responsible for legislative or ordinance matters and hiring the city manager and city attorney. All members of the city council are currently elected at large. We have 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes per question for this. The first question is to Mr. Scott. How do you plan to address the health and financial effects of COVID-19 on our community?
Well, how am I going to do that? First off, we're going to need to rebuild the downtown. We're going to need to have an economic development plan that utilizes some of the unallocated resources that we heard in Tuesday night's city council meeting, that we have funds. I think we need to set up a forgiveness loan plan for our local businesses. We need to also understand how we can use some of our amenities, such as the depot, put money into the depot so that we can have a destination down there using some of our historic values, talk to our tourism group. And also, one of the things that we have to understand is Apple, Facebook, and other .coms have decided that they are going to move towards a 50% remote workforce. We have everything, including an incredible school system, that those .comers are going to want to have as they are remote workers. We need to develop a plan to bring people into the community, to enjoy our community, so that they can spend during their 12-hour days. Millennials are on a 12-hour day, especially as remote workers. So we need to be able to build businesses that have the retail products that these millennials want. So it's going to be a combination of tourism. It's going to be a combination of remote workers and attracting them through realtors. And it's going to be an opportunity to talk about our history.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Same question, Mr. Masensky. Would you like me to reread it?
Please, if you don't mind.
How do you plan to address the health and financial effects of COVID-19 on our community?
So I actually see this as a three-part response. There's basically three primary things that we need to focus on. One is preservation. We need to focus on the preservation of our downtown businesses that are currently there. We need to look at coming out with a second round of boost grants with the additional funds that Mr. Scott had mentioned earlier. Additionally, we need to try to do more to allow new businesses to open. So whether that's a deferred business permit deferral fee program or pushing off fees related to building permits, we need to make sure that we can encourage people to invest in our downtown, because our downtown is the lifeblood of our community. Expansion. We need to get more creative with how we can entice businesses to open. We're getting to the point to where we're actually starting to have a few pop-up stores. We're actually migrating vendors from our farmers market into brick and mortar operations, and they're surviving. We need to continue to do that. Beyond the economics of restructuring our civic government to actually be more efficient is going to be critical. We can't continue to have an expectation that we can receive all the services that we've come to enjoy without actually generating more revenue to pay for them. So we have to look to restructure and eliminate higher level positions within our government so that we can actually have savings and pass those on to our community members to maintain and keep services.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Masensky. Mr. Campbell, would you like me to reread the question?
I think I'm good on this one. So
Okay.
I'll give it a shot. Anyway, we just went over this Tuesday night at the city council. We have a plan. We're implementing a plan. So we are going in, I think, the right direction. Basically, what it boils down to is we have to have speed and consistency in responding to the businesses, and we have to be flexible with permitting rules. That's why we were able to do things like parklets relatively quickly, for example, downtown. And what it boils down to is you can't treat the downtown area the same way you treat the industrial park. Downtown, we can use basic monetary policy. We've already put $500,000 into downtown merchant and small businesses to help them stay afloat and to keep their jobs. And we can continue, and are planning on continuing to put more money in there because we have at our disposal, not in small part because of things that I've done, we have $21 million to work with, $9 million in reserves, $12 million in unassigned funds. So that part with the downtown and small business, we have it under control. Out in the industrial park, we do not have that kind of money to do the same thing. So what we have to do is we have to work on infrastructure improvements to help them in any way we can. That includes things like roads, broadband, 5G broadband, things like taking care of a water and wastewater problems they may have, and work on things like improving the transportation for the employees, such as what we did when we did the bus intermodal station we just put in there a couple of years ago.
Time's up. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Next will be Mr. Masensky. Benicia's population is diverse by race, culture, age, and economic status. What plans do you have to address the needs of all our residents and ensure equal representation for each of us?
Yeah, so I think the idea that the perception that we actually are, as far as communities within Solano County, we're not as racially or diverse as one might think. Our predominant population and demographics are still very much Caucasian leaning. Regardless of that point, it's not to say that diversity and inclusion doesn't matter to us. And as civic leaders, there's three primary things that I will absolutely make sure that we can do. One is elevating and doing outreach to make sure that all aspects of our community can actually have a voice in the conversation. The method of government in which the people come to the government asking for information is an old model. We have to do better in communicating. We have to utilize and leverage technology to get out and reach people, because people that are working hard and into the middle of the night are working day shifts or night shifts don't have the ability to come down to all of our hearings. The second thing is make sure that we have diversity and inclusion policies across all of our departments to ensure that there's appropriate hiring policies that can increase and bring in unrepresented populations into our civic government so that they have a represented voice. And the last thing is just making sure that we can provide an opportunity for everybody to actually live within our community. Housing is one of the largest barriers for people to come to Benicia because of the cost. So I'll absolutely be an advocate for housing within our community, whether it's market rate, senior, or affordable. We absolutely need to start developing our housing stock because there's a pent-up demand for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell, shall I reread the question?
No, I'll take a shot at it, because this is something we just recently were doing, and there was a lot of controversy about it involved. What we're going to do as far as an equity and diversity manager, and that was one of the things that I got the council to go along with. We really don't want to spend $200,000 on something where we're the first one out there trying to figure out how to do things. So I divided it into 3 steps. First, we'd have a subcommittee hire equity and diversity employee for about 3 months, come up with a plan. We then go to equity and diversity report. When that report comes back, at that point, we know what we really need, what we are trying to accomplish here. And we can decide at that point whether we need to hire an equity and diversity employee or whether we do something the same as we do with the independent audits that we do every year with the city with finances. We could do the same thing possibly with equity and diversity, bring in an independent person once a year to look at how we're doing in solving these diversity problems. Benicia, Trevor's right. It's not completely by any means diverse. 70% Caucasian, roughly about 12% Latino, roughly about 10% Asian, and 5 to 6% African American. So it is heavily weighted toward Caucasian, and we have to take that into account so that we don't do any of these unconscious biases.
Time's up. I'm afraid.
Long about.
All right. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Scott.
Well, thank you. As Trevor and Tom both said, and I agree with them, that we say we are a diverse community, but as the demographics have been said, that we are heavily Caucasian. As I said in my opening, the most important thing that a city council member can do, the most important thing that you can do in business is learn to listen, not self-talk, but learn to listen. And I think that what we need to do is we need to be able to be understanding of all the needs of all of our community members. We have a lack of understanding at times of what other people are thinking. There is this unconscious bias. I do believe that there is this thing called unconscious bias. And we make some assumptions as a white person, an older white person in America, that we have an expectation. So I think that we need to understand how we can get inclusion by reaching out to the communities and giving them a forum in which they can communicate effectively with us as city council members. We need to understand how they can have equal representation on various committees and boards, how they can understand that the equity and diversity manager that Tom had talked about is absolutely right. We need to phase it in so we get an understanding of what kind of needs and issues that we have in the community, so then we can prioritize them and then we can address them.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Campbell. How do you foresee the city improving its financial situation and maintaining its infrastructure? What steps would you take to diversify our economic base?
We have about a half hour. I could probably, do that one for a long time. This is our problem in Benicia right now. We actually do not have as diverse of an economy as we would like by leaps and bounds. Valero, of course, is our biggest producer. 20% of our total revenue comes from Valero. We don't really want to have that kind of a situation. Valero doesn't want to have that kind of situation. They want us to be more diverse too. The one place where we can do this most is the Sino property, 500 acres outside of town. And that is where our real biggest chance for diversity, economic development, and to switch engines, so to speak, to go to something more along the lines of a business park, technological park, something away from manufacturing and heavy industry. That is where we need to go. The problem we have had so far is the Discovery Bays is Sino's construction company. They want to put houses out there. That is the only thing they've wanted to do for 3 generations now. We have to somehow convince them that doing a technological business park would be a much better way to go and would be much more lucrative to them. That would be the way we can truly diversify. Otherwise, in the industrial park, it's just little bits and pieces where we try to do things, but we don't have a major impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Scott. Would you like me to reread the question?
No, I think I got it. Diversifying the economic base is a big issue. Obviously, we rely significantly on income and taxes coming out of Valero. One of the things that I hear all the time when I'm walking around downtown is that seniors want to age in place. They want to stay in the community, and they look at, where do I go when I can no longer walk up those stairs in the Aliantes down in the central core of the community? So I think that there are two ways to look at this. One, at both sides of the demographic profile. At the top end of the profile, where the silver tsunami is, which I have written extensively on, we need to be able to provide an opportunity for them to live. So I would look at that CINO property and say, can we put a mixed use facility, a living facility, assisted living facility there for over 55-year-olds to then be able to stay part of the community that they have had 2 generations or 3 generations of, and have a bus and transit into the community, as well as to the medical centers. In addition to that, at the other end of the spectrum, millennials, they are building a remote workforce. We have a number of buildings and warehouses that we could create informational hubs where these remote workers could come, they could work, they could be out of their house, they could not have to worry about the kids in the background, they could be socially distanced, and they could have access to high-speed internet and the accoutrements that they need to build a business.
All right, thank you. And next is Mr. Masensky.
Yeah, so I think that there's 2 primary things that you need to do to try to stabilize our local economy. One is you got to go from an expansion perspective. Both Terry and Tom have talked a bit about the CINO property. That's one option. I too concur that we need to have a mix of uses out there. I've actually already articulated my position that I believe it needs to be industrial along second. We need to have a commercial hub near where Chevron is. There needs to be high density and multi-use type housing behind that, with single family residential behind that. And the reason why you need to do that is by simply just doing a business park, you're only really increasing the property tax contribution to the general fund, which is actually the predominant force within our existing general fund. So if you look at it from a financial management perspective, you actually want to have more either TOT taxes and or retail taxes to try to offset some of the service costs. But additionally, I think you need to start taking a hard look at some of our departmental structures. Right now, as everyone's aware, we had our city manager walk out the door. We have our chief currently running our city. I think this is an opportunity to step in and look how we can streamline and restructure some of our departments to reduce the number of directors which we have within each of our municipal divisions. In doing so, we're reducing the operational cost, and we're not going to see a massive service demand loss. So there's some minor tweaks that we can make to departmental positions, eliminating unnecessary staff and reassigning responsibilities to still deliver the same amount of services. And then at a worst case scenario, we have to look at reducing services if needed.
Thank you. I want to remind our audience on YouTube that you can enter questions in the YouTube chat for the candidates. And in probably about 10 more minutes, we may have an opportunity to address some of the audience questions. Mr. Scott, next question. What attributes or skill set will you be looking for when hiring a new city manager?
Good question. I think what we've seen from our police chief is the ability to have skin in the game. Someone who reaches out to the community, who is involved in the community, and who has access to the community. And the reason why I use that as an example is I think the failing of our former city manager was based on her inability to understand the nuances of our community. So one is a commitment to understanding the nuances of our community, to be able to communicate and understand the needs of the community. I would be looking for someone who has also small historic city experience. One of the key attributes, obviously, of our community is so much of our historic pride. And I would like to have someone in place who understands how to deal with history, historical preservation issues, and how at the same time we can address some of the future needs that we have. I would also look at someone who would be able to understand what we possibly could do with a mixed use property, as we have just discussed, at CINO. Someone who would be able to deal with developers, recognize the infrastructure needs, be able to understand what are the BUSD, the school system requirements that would be attached to it. So that someone who would be able to look big picture and be involved in the community at all aspects, not just manage the community from a 9 to 5, 9 to 6 job.
Thank you. Mr. Masensky, what attributes or skill set will you be looking for when hiring a new city manager?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, your selection for your next set of council representatives, that's going to be one of the biggest tasks that we're going to be faced with, right? The city council, in collaboration with our community members, are going to have to identify and screen candidates to be our new city manager. So having done and participated on similar panels in the past for municipalities across California as an urban planner, I feel I have a good track record in knowing what type of characteristics to identify. I think that there's 4 primary things that we need to make sure our next city manager has. One is you need, as Terry had mentioned, an experience with a historic district or contributing districts within a downtown area. Benicia has a very complex historic downtown mixed-use master plan, which is unique in and of itself. They need to have an advanced understanding of how that correlates to development within a waterfront. The permitting complexities that come with being in the San Francisco Bay Area and working with the regulatory agencies, both within the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, the San Francisco Regional Water Quality Control Board, and BCDC, are very difficult unless you've been there and done that. The third piece is obviously making sure they actually have operational management experience within California, because it's a unique beast. I wouldn't be a big advocate of hiring a city manager from another state because of the complexities not only of our municipal law, but our government code as well. And lastly, if we can actually have somebody that has experience with an industrial or manufacturing type town, I think that's going to be critical too, because the user type that we have that primarily generates the majority of our property tax basis is of an industrial nature.
Thank you. And Mr. Campbell.
All right. Well, I've kind of been around for a fair bit of time in city government here. So I've been around for 4 city managers and 2 interim city managers. So I've seen multiple variations on the way things can be approached. For me, first of all, as Terry mentioned, they have to be connected with the community. One of my favorites lived in Benicia. One of them sort of lived in Benicia and everybody else did. So they need to be more connected with the community than they sometimes are. They need to be a seasoned manager. And if you're a good manager, you can be given all sorts of different things off of every wall you can imagine, and you can still feel them. And that's really important. They have to also be a team builder because they're dealing with 200 employees that they have to have on the same page as they're on. And they have to have a huge amount of patience. Benicia is a tough town to work for, tough town to manage for. And worth noting, the city council has to be capable of being flexible and not hardened. They're going to have to be capable of dealing with the personality of the new city manager. And that's not always been the case. One of the things which has to happen is it's a two-way street. The city council has to be able to make modifications in their behavior to also keep the city manager happy. So those are just some of the things which both sides need to be capable of doing.
Thank you. And next, let's see, get my right number, is Mr. Masensky. And the question is, what steps will you take to provide safe, high quality water to Benicia residents at affordable costs?
That's a good question. I think the affordability one is I'll start right there and say it's going to be challenging for our community to have affordable water rate structure simply because previous city councils historically had to sell off some historic water rights to actually try to put us in a better financial position. So the only way that we actually lower the per water rate cost is by trying to find efficiencies within the system. Now you can find an efficiency within the system by developing a recycled water program, which the city has looked at. Unfortunately, there's a funding gap related to making that project actually happen. The second thing is you can try to make our water rates a little bit more affordable, and people have talked about this extensively, basically taking our service charge fees and putting on our property taxes. So there's a little bit of a savings to the community. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're going to have to solve that problem ourselves. Our community has too much of a high income demographic to receive a lot of federal grant funds or loans to try to solve our failing infrastructure problem, which drives a massive portion of what the water and replacement costs are. As it is, we actually have seen an increase in the improvement of the water and the discharge in the San Francisco Bay. We actually all were as part of a briefing, and we were able to see that we actually haven't had any violations within recent history related to our wastewater plant. And the water treatment that we have is of high quality. We just need to make sure that we can continue to capitalize and expand our community so that we can offset some of those infrastructure costs to hopefully reduce the bills that go to everyone.
Thank you. And Mr. Campbell.
This is another one that could go on interminably long on this. The best way to describe it is, we have a lot of problems which we've inherited from future or from past generations. For example, we shouldn't have put all our eggs in one basket to get the state water, because what happened was it sounded good. $22 an acre foot is a really good rate, but the trouble was we have to pay for all of the 17,000 acre feet of water which we contracted with the state, even though the state can turn around and say, you got to pay all of that, but we're only going to give you 5–10% of that amount. So that $22 acre foot all of a sudden turns into $200 an acre foot. So at that point, it's no longer such a great deal, but about 25 years ago, a city council put all its eggs in one basket, and we have to deal with it ever since. So what we have to do is we have to re-diversify. We have to do things which we have been trying to do for quite a while. For example, we get some of our water from the Solano irrigation district, some of the water from Lake Berryessa. We actually get some water from a water bank in the Mojave Desert of all places, and it lowers the amount we're actually paying per dollar of water. That's one thing we have to worry about. Another thing we have to worry about, we had a city council meeting where it went over the capital improvements that are needed in water alone, not counting wastewater, over the next 20 years. And it added up to $300 million, $300 million in 20 years in capital projects to bring us back where our deteriorating infrastructure has occurred. These are very tough. Well, never mind.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Scott.
Thank you. As Trevor and as Tom said, two of the three T's here, affordability in water is going to be the most difficult thing as we look to the future. They're talking about within the next 10 to 15 years, water wars in California of how we get access to clean, affordable water, how we get access to raw water. One of the things that I look at is there the opportunity to do a closed loop system? I know that this might be expensive, but can we know that Valero uses a significant amount, almost half of the water coming in the pipeline into the city of Benicia. Is there a way that we can partner with Valero, look at that waste water that we're dumping into the bay, cleanly into the bay, but then loop it back into Valero so that Valero is using that for operational water into their system. So that means that we would be able to reduce significantly the amount of water that we're out there searching for, because the water rates are just going to increase. In addition to that, from a consumer perspective, from a resident's perspective, I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to continue our freezing of the rates so that people can get an understanding of how they're going to be able to budget as we are searching from the city perspective of how to control and find other water sources. In addition to that, we do have the capital improvements, as Tom said, watching that city council meeting a few weeks ago. It's going to be very difficult to find new water sources and keep our capital improvements budget in control.
Thank you. And next, we'll start with Mr. Campbell. Let's see if I'm in the right spot. Here we go. Describe what proposals you would support to alleviate the shortage of affordable housing for all income groups in Benicia.
Well, this is a tough nut to crack, because Benicia doesn't want to grow. It likes, and the residents I like the size of the city we're at right now. 28,000 is a controllable city. The problem with that is, if you're going to solve the affordable housing problem, you have to grow. You have to increase, because there's just no room to put in the roughly 300 units, which the state says we need to put in of affordable housing. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You have a set of residents that don't want to increase in size. At the same time, you have a problem which has to be done by increasing the size of the city. So the thing we've done, and we're not going to be able to meet the state's requirement, but we're trying to at least move in that direction, is things like infill, putting in multi-unit projects, doing things like accessory dwelling units. And there is one place up between the two mansions up on the hill in the port area where there is proposed a potential project for older citizens, I suppose like me, there would be up to a couple of hundred units of houses, apartments, condominiums up there. And, if you take 200 units and put them up there, all of a sudden those 300 units we need doesn't seem so insurmountable.
Thank you, sir. Next is Mr. Scott.
Thank you. I agree with Tom. I look at infill housing as a unique opportunity for us to go to multi-family housing. So we have a number of vacant lots around the city. But we should be looking at if we can build 2-family or 3-family houses in that area, as long as it meets the structure, as long as it meets the aesthetic value of the community. In addition to that, we have a large property on D Street. I know it's been bounced around. What are we going to do with that parking lot right now? Are we going to look at it as potentially a hotel? I would suggest that we look at that as single floor senior living that would be affordable housing. In addition to that, we've designated the 5th Street corridor as an area where we're bringing in a coordinator to look at designating how we can build that area up for affordable housing. In addition to that, we have a unique opportunity to, with all the alleys and the garages that we have in our community, to do accessory dwelling units and build that construction and encourage people to build. One of the things is it needs to have a commitment from the city. And part of that would also be in how we look at permitting, how we look at fees, how we create an ombudsman to support that development so that when builders are coming in, that they recognize that they will have a streamlined process into building affordable housing. So I think that there's all sorts of opportunities if we design a team for it.
Thank you. And Mr. Masensky.
So there's 5 primary things that we need to do to increase our community's ability to produce housing. The first is, Terry had mentioned the SB2 planning grant corridor along 5th Street. On the Planning Commission, I worked hand in hand with our city staff to actually try to expand that area. The idea around that grant, which we got $150,000 for, is to try to streamline the future entitlement process so developers could walk in and those lands would already be upzoned to accommodate a mix of uses, retail, commercial, and multifamily residential. The second is we need to create a policy structure which incentivizes infill redevelopment. So if you're going to go in for a building permit, but if you put 2 structures on the same lot, the rate structure that you would pay would actually be less to incentivize people to actually utilize underutilized land. The third that we've talked about is related to casino property. I don't need to go into much detail there, but that's a way that we can actually incorporate a decent amount of housing in one fell swoop. The fourth one is actually the arsenal. Those who may not know, there's something called the Arsenal Specific Plan. There's actually a major opportunity for housing and development out there that was previously already evaluated. The challenge with it is actually the densities that were contemplated don't match the cost relative to the infrastructure and remediation. And then I guess the third is making sure that we have a programmatic evaluation associated with our vacant lots that are in town, because this next council is going to have to go through a general plan update. And that general plan and EIR will have to evaluate and should evaluate our vacant lots and ideas of how we want to use them so that they're already entitled so the developer can come in and be consistent with our general plan and actually have a project happen.
Thank you. Our first question from the audience will go to Mr. Scott. When talking about COVID-19, you all suggested plans to help businesses, but didn't mention anything about protecting the health of the residents of Benicia. What plans do you have for that?
Well, we learned at the city council meeting the other night that we're running, and as Tom pointed out, we have some funds, some significant funds. I would put together at least a $500,000 grant that we would be able to help people who are facing eviction, people who are looking at needing funds for rent, for food, etc. I've partnered with Benicia Strong on ways to feed the hungry in our community. I think the city needs to be able to provide funds, just like we did on the loan program for our businesses, provide the same kind of tools to our residents. From my understanding, we have about 1,400 people in our community that are completely out of work. We need to be able to do things for them, including, as I noted, providing funds for our restaurants, funds for our retail establishments so that they can go in and spend that money locally.
All right, good, thank you. And Mr. Masensky?
Yeah, I think there's two-pronged approach that we need to take to make sure that we can ensure our community's health kind of during our recovery from COVID and after the fact. I think actually some new recent studies have been released to show that it's not only just a physical health condition, but also there's mental health implications as well. So from the mental health side, I think as a community and as a council, we can try to identify policies and areas and priorities to safely inform our community where they can safely recreate outside and what that means. Obviously not large gatherings, but our community has a lot of great public parks and access, and making sure that our community members know how and when they can utilize that to try to get their mental well-being in order. I think the second piece related to the physical well-being of our community members is making sure that not only we have funds allocated to try to help our community that needs it on a one-off kind of grant basis, but also equipping our fire and police officers with masks as well as informational material. Because I'll tell you, I've walked around town a lot and seen people that just don't understand how to even use PPE. So I think there's a learning gap there.
Thank you. And Mr. Campbell?
Could you repeat the question? I want to make sure I've got the right question.
When talking about COVID-19, you all suggested plans to help businesses, but didn't mention anything about protecting the health of the residents of Benicia. What plans do you have for that?
Okay, that's what I thought we were talking about there. Well, the face masks, the mandatory face mask ordinance we put in place there, that's one thing we have to keep enforcing and not let up on. That's what's happened to a lot of states and a lot of countries. They started to back off. They thought that the coronavirus was over, and then lo and behold, of course it wasn't. And education, we have to keep educating the populace that, besides, the social distancing, face masks, washing your hands, you also have to keep large gatherings from not happening. 86% of the cases we have in Benicia have happened after the face mask ordinance was put in place there. It was 25 when it was put in place on June 16th. Now it's 179. And oh darn, I ran out of time. I was going to say, our public health director in Solano County said the biggest problem right now is social gathering.
We did run out of time. So,
sorry.
Yeah, thank you. We have to pause for a sec to get our, for the coordinators to get our time schedules together. Gail and Susan, it looks to me like we should be starting closing statements.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
All right, so we have run out of time, and we'll go now to closing statements in the reverse order. So we begin with those opening statements. Hold on a sec here, sorry. Closing statements, begin with Mr. Campbell.
Okay. Well, as far as my main thing, it's to try and bring us back out of this COVID recession. We're in a good spot. We have $9 million in reserves, another $12 million in unassigned funds. So we got $21 million to work with, and we have a plan. We went over it Tuesday night. And now I'm going to go off script a little bit, and what I want to do is, years ago, I did a campaign reform ordinance, and back after the 2018 election, which was a pretty nasty election, I got the council to redo a few things. And what I really want to do is, Trevor and Terry, I want to say, they run a clean campaign. They've done a really nice job. They deserve to be on the council. Granted, I like to think I deserve to be on it more. I'm not an idiot. I'm going to, not completely, say I like to see them on instead of me. But I just want to thank them for doing that, because you can see the difference between our level at the city council level versus the mayor's race, which is getting ugly and getting uglier almost by the day. And so for me, Trevor and Terry, I want to thank you. You're a credit to the community. I hope if you don't get on it this time, because I'm still rooting for me to get on it, that you get on it at some point. You both have shown a passion for the community. You're both bright. You're both, are quite capable and belong on the city council. And I just wanted to thank you for doing that, for, doing, a nice campaign and showing, you're bright and you deserve everything that goes your way. Thank you. And that's all I have to say.
I think the timer started at 3 minutes. It should only have been 2, I believe.
Well, I'm done.
All right, great, thank you. Next is Mr. Scott. No?
What?
Wait, hold on a sec.
I think it's me. It's all right.
Oh, wait a sec. We have to get our timing together.
Oh,
Isn't it 2 minutes for the closing statements? No, 3 minutes? Okay, excuse me.
I'm only going to use 2. I got to get
It's
some.
2 minutes. 2 minutes for closing.
All right.
For the closing, okay.
Okay. All right. So, well, I'm sure everyone out there has heard a lot of discussion tonight. I appreciate everybody kind of connecting in. I want to, hopefully folks that don't know anything about me have been able to learn a little bit about me. So in closing, I just want to thank everybody for hosting this forum. I think any way that we can connect with our community members is helpful to try to get an understanding of who we are as people and what we'd like to try to help our city achieve. As Tom mentioned, we're all volunteers and we're doing this for the right reasons to try to help. So in closing, I just want to let you know that I have a vision for our community. I have a vision for one where we're going to try to build on our historic roots as a community, where we can try to attract some high-paying jobs into town that can support our local businesses out of this. I want to make sure that there's a great education system. I've got 3 kids, and that's going to be a big priority for me. And I want to make sure that my kids' kids want to live in Benicia. One of the great things that attracted me to this community was actually the fact that there's multi-generational families that still exist in the Bay Area, and they're right here in our town. But don't get me wrong, this is not going to be an easy task. We have some hard times in front of us, and it's going to take some creativity and new ideas to try to help position our city to respond to the health and economic challenges that are in the coming months. So I'm not afraid of hard work if people know me. And so I'm willing to step up and try to help lead our community through this hard time. And so we can hopefully bounce back stronger, because during this time we will learn something new and it will make us better. So I promise to you that I will always listen to your voices, always fight for what is best for Benicia. And I hope that I can earn your vote this November. So my name is Trevor Masensky and I'm running for Benicia City Council. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Scott, you get to wrap it up.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up. First off, I want to say thank you, Tom. From one old guy to another, thank you very much, because I was jotting down notes as the question was coming up, and I came up with the first 2 words, that this whole forum has been respectful, it has been insightful, and it has been issue oriented. And I thank Trevor and I thank you, Tom, for having a campaign that has basically been at a very high level. We have stuck to issues. We have talked in using social media. We have kept it at a high plane. From my perspective, as a grandparent, one of the key things that I want to leave with the voters is that I believe that I have a legacy to leave. And that legacy is of a clean environment, of clean air and clean water. As a member of the community, I have a legacy to continue to maintain the historic values and the core values of our community. As a businessman, I look at the opportunities that we have in our community and say, we can do better, we can do more. We have a Play-Doh, going back to my toy business days. We are a bunch of Play-Doh. We just need to form it right and get it into the right areas. My vision is very simple, is to have Benicia be the best it can be and look at it from a different perspective. There's all sorts of ways to look at answers, but I look at it as saying, why? Why are we doing these things? And then finally, as I said in the beginning, we're only as good as the people who we listen to and the ability to understand how we listen. And so I think that that's the most important thing, listening. And that's what I will do if you elect me to City Council.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you. Thank you all very much for your time and your being very informative, focusing on the issues and ending on time. Hard to believe. So we, Gail, I guess over to you.
I'm
one last thing. So there were a number of questions that we did not have time to answer from the audience. We will send you those questions, and any replies you make, we will post on our website. So, thank you. Gail.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters, the AAUW and Carquinez Village, I would like to thank all of you candidates for taking time here to be here tonight. Running for office is difficult, and we admire anyone who is willing to run and serve their community by being an elected official. Please reach out to the candidates if you have additional questions or concerns. I would also encourage you to use Voters Edge, the California League website that has nonpartisan information about the candidates' propositions and measures. Go to votersedge.org, type in your street address and your zip code to find your candidate choices. The recording of this forum will be posted on the League of Women Voters Solano County's YouTube channel with a link on our website. The copyright for this forum belongs to the League of Women Voters of Solano County, which reserves all rights to the recording of this forum. No portion of this content of this forum may be reproduced or otherwise used without prior written consent from the League of Women Voters. No portion of this recording may be used to promote one candidate or oppose another in any way. Additionally, no portion of this forum may be used to imply that the League of Women Voters endorses any candidate. If the recording of this forum is to be used, it must be used in its entirety. We felt very strongly that we did not want the pandemic to prevent voters from learning about the candidates who are running for office. A virtual event such as this is complicated and takes a great deal of time and effort to create. There are many people behind the scenes that made today's forum happen. We would like to thank Niles Metters, Julie Hartford, Sandy Curry, Craig Patterson, Rami Muth, Ali Desiderio. I said it wrong again. Desiderio, there. Our timer, Barbara Hausman, our chat manager, Susan Newhouse, our technical coordinator and president of Carquinez Village. We will welcome your feedback and hope you'll take a moment to leave a comment in the chat box on YouTube. This information will help us to know the aspects of the forum that worked well and where we can improve. Thank you for attending, and remember that democracy is not a spectator sport. Make a plan and vote on or before November 3rd. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
everybody. Thank you. Thank you all.
So we get a couple of minutes break, I guess.
Allie, can you hear me? Okay, I apologize. I looked at the wrong line. The schedule is for 3 minutes, but if we had gone 3 minutes, yeah, we had enough time to do 3 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sorry for that. I was supposed to take 2 minutes to close. Desiderio. I keep wanting to say desiderata. That's where I get that. So I apologize. I'll get it right. I promise.
It didn't say that in my material.
It didn't?
No.
Are you looking at schedule 2? It says closing statements 3 minutes each.
No, I was looking at the moderator's statement to the.
Okay, on the yep. Okay, sorry. So it should be 3 minutes for closing statement.
Okay.
So I looked too fast. I panicked there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the mayors are going to get 3 minutes, right, for closing.
The mayors will do 3 minutes for closing. 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well done, Niles.
Yep,
You
we
did a
made
good
it
job.
through round 1. Give me 2 minutes and we'll tackle round 2.
Okay. Welcome aboard, Christina. Hi, Steve.
Hi.
Hi, Jason.
Hello. Great job on the first half.
Thank you. Oh, it's 7 o'clock. We better start. Okay. Good evening. and welcome to our Benicia City Council and Mayoral Candidates Forum. My name is Gail Vaughn, past president of the local League of Women Voters and the coordinator of this event. Our co-sponsors for this forum are Benicia Vallejo American Association of University Women and Carquinez Village. Niles, I think it goes to you.
Hello, my name is Niles Meadows, and I'll be your moderator for this forum, which I guess is co-sponsored by League of Women Voters, the Benicia Vallejo American Association of University Women, and the Carquinez Village. I'd like to welcome the mayoral candidates who are with us this evening. Start my video. Okay. Sorry about that. Christina Strawbridge, Steve Young, and Jason Diabotes. Is that correct, Jason? All verified candidates were invited and are here this evening. We appreciate their taking the time to appear on this forum. This event is a forum, not a debate. The difference is that in a forum, each candidate will be asked the same questions. They will not speak to each other, but rather they will speak to you, the audience. We have asked the candidates not to refer to one another, and we ask they not mention endorsements or any particular affiliations, but to focus on what they will bring to the position of mayor. Candidates will be given 2 minutes for their opening statements, 1.5 minutes to answer the questions, and 3 minutes for their closing statements. Following the prepared questions, we will ask questions submitted by our YouTube audience via the YouTube chat box. For those questions, candidates will have 1 minute per question. The order in which the candidates will make their opening statements has been decided by the League and follows the order in which they are listed on the ballot. After their opening statements, they will be given the questions in an alternating order. At the conclusion of the question and answer section, candidates will make closing statements in reverse order. We've asked them to give you, the audience, a way to contact them should you have further questions. And we'll begin the opening statements with, nope, wrong list, excuse me, with Christina Strawbridge.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for having this and putting it on for the candidates. My name is Christina Strawbridge and I'm running for mayor of Benicia. I'm running on proven leadership of 35 years in Benicia. Compassion, collaboration, and cooperation are is my mission. I am formally denouncing the negative campaigning that has been done on behalf of my campaign. I firmly believe that it does not work in Benicia. I don't need it. I'm running on a record that has spanned 4 decades as a business owner, Benicia Main Street president and event coordinator, economic development chair, tourism, state parks, Southern Pacific Depot, 7 years on the city council. I am running a positive campaign capturing the values of Benicia. I produced 2 commercials airing on selected by in a local market. I've put up over 300 signs and 33 road signs. I've not really walked all the neighborhoods, but dropping over 5,000 brochures. It's been done by volunteers, my friends, and my husband of almost 49 years. Sending out 1 mailer, and that reinforces my message of it's time. I don't need phone calls being made on behalf that can't pronounce my name, or worse, our town's name, or ads that have unflattering pictures of my opponent. What I do need is civility, and I'm asking my opponent to disavow the personal attacks that have been directed at me, my family, my business, and my work on behalf of the nonprofits here in town. These attacks have been going on since I announced back in January. We as candidates signed a voluntary code of ethics in order to make our elections clean. I've been called illegitimate, incompetent, and without proof or reference to a Form 460. I've never taken money from Valero, Sino, and Amports. I've been called unfit for council and corruption in reference to Benicia Magazine. So with that, I'm hoping my opponent doesn't need any.
That's time, Christina.
Okay, and run on his record. Thanks.
Next will be Mr. Sorry, I'm sorry, I got a little bit turned. Mr. Diabotes, is that the correct pronunciation?
It is. You did a great job. Jason
Thank you.
Diabotes. Hi, I'd first like to thank you for the League of Women Voters, the AAUW and Carquinez Village, and all of your volunteers and staff to make this happen tonight. I know it's a lot of work, so thank you for hosting this event this evening. I think it gives our community a great opportunity to hear from each one of us. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Jason Diabotes. I was born and raised here in Benicia. I attended Mary Farmer Elementary School, Benicia Middle School, and I graduated from Benicia High School, although some of my teachers may say barely. That may not be wrong. I started my first business just after graduating from Benicia High School, and I've owned and operated businesses in Benicia for over 28 years. I've been very involved with the community for that whole time. I'm running for mayor of Benicia because there are major issues that have not been solved. We talk about it year in, year out, every campaign season. As mayor, I will focus on the local issues that we can solve together for the benefit of all of us and not let the national politics divide us. Key issues that we always hear about are reducing the water and sewer rates, which have more than doubled since 2016, prioritize the repair and improvement of our deteriorating roads, keep Benicia safe by investing in training and retention of our great community peace officers, improving access to our city council meetings with live streaming on social media, just like we're doing tonight. I've been trying for over a year lobbying the city council and the city staff to share these meetings on social media. And so far, they don't want to do it. Of course, there are many other important civic matters to address, such as expanding public art, the Benicia tourism, better transparency, supporting our community events, budget management, economic development, which is a big thing to me as a business owner. And most importantly, my desire is to provide a mayorship that will be readily accessible to you. I want to listen and act on your concerns so we can work together to solve the needs of our wonderful city by the strait.
Time's up. Thank you, sir. And last, Mr. I'm sorry, I'm getting this from Mr. Young.
Thank you. And I want to thank also the League and the AAUW Carquinez Village. I think this is a great opportunity for people to tune in and see us and compare us. A little bit about myself. I spent my career in local government. I spent 30 years there, primarily in the fields of affordable housing and redevelopment and community development. My last job, I retired from Sacramento as the Director of Community Development, where part of my responsibilities included the redevelopment of 2 closed Air Force bases, McClellan Air Force Base and Mather Air Force Bases. I retired in 2008. I moved with my family to Costa Rica, where we lived for 4 years. The reason we did that was to primarily give my daughter the experience of growing up and living in a different culture. And so we were there for 4 years. She went through high school there. When she graduated and came back to the US to go to college, we decided that we were a little bit far away. We didn't really want to, we shifted gears. We were going to stay in Costa Rica. After 4 years, we had sort of had enough and we wanted to come back. So we did. We settled in Benicia. I got appointed to the Planning Commission soon after I got here. One of the first things that was on the docket was the Valero Crude by Rail project. I did a lot of research on that project. I ultimately decided it was too dangerous for the community. I advocated against it. I voted against it. Ultimately, the Planning Commission voted unanimously against it. That was, I think, a surprise to the community, but it was the right decision. The City Council ultimately affirmed that decision. It might explain why Valero has decided that I'm not worthy of being elected mayor at this point, but they can speak for themselves. And since then, I was elected in 2016, and I'll be happy to talk about some of those things when I get a chance. Thanks. Are we frozen?
Niles, can you ask the next question?
Sorry about that, folks. That
Nope,
was well
you can
ended. In Benicia, the mayor is responsible for overseeing the various departments, police, fire, public works, etc., and working with county, regional, and state entities for the betterment of the city. How do you plan to address the financial and health effects of COVID-19 on our community? And the first question that goes to Ms. Strawbridge.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. First of all, the mayor and the city council hire a city manager and a city attorney. They run the city. So we're a full service city, and they run the departments and the directors of those departments. We have done some incredible things in response to COVID. We have created a business task force that I joined Elizabeth Patterson on to make sure that our business community were talking to each other and responding to COVID. From that, we have been able to develop a boost program that has given nearly $500,000 to our businesses. And it's more than any city in Solano County. So I'm very proud of that. I'm also proud of the fact that those meetings has also helped in Ponder Environmental, Valero, and a number of other businesses that did a grant program on their own, business to business, and awarded $250,000 to our businesses that were really in need during COVID. We've also funded the FRC, the Family Resource Center, helping our people that have been laid off and in need of help with their rent and food and utilities. So we are on it, and I'm excited about what we are doing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Strawbridge. Next is Mr. Diabotes.
Can you go ahead and repeat that? I just want to make sure I have the right question.
Sure. How do you plan to address the financial and health effects of COVID-19 on our community?
So I'll tell you, as a business owner myself in this town, we're all struggling. And the city has definitely done some things. I just think it could go further. One of the number one things that is missing is communication with the stakeholders. So helping the business community is only part of it. I think there are a lot of people in our community that are suffering financially from this, but they're also so suffering emotionally from this. COVID has been a nightmare for all of us. So some of the main things I think that we can allow our businesses to do the innovation. You look at businesses like Sailor Jack's, they went out, they created the windscreens along the water, which I thought was genius. Vinticello's created their parklet out there, which was an idea that actually started with Chief Upson and myself a few years ago before we did the sidewalk dining ordinance. So there are definitely ways we can let the businesses innovate the solutions. The city could support those, but ultimately it's going to be a partnership between the city and the businesses, communicate with the residents as well, so we can work on the solutions.
Thank you. And let's see, next is Mr. Young.
So I think the city has been a little late to the game. It was slow to respond to COVID, frankly. Early on in March, I was down talking to restaurant owners, and that's how I first got to know Jason, actually. And we talked about a program that we called Downtown Dollars, which would have allowed for certificates of $100 given to residents who'd been affected by the virus in terms of being furloughed or laid off or had their hours cut. Those certificates could then be used at a local restaurant or small business. It seemed like a simple way to do some quick economic stimulus and show that the city was committed early on. Jason supported it, as did the Union Hotel, as did the First Street Cafe. But when we brought it to the council on March 26th, it was turned down. And Tom Campbell was the only one who supported me on that idea. And he was strongly in favor of it. But the only explanation I got at the time was that it was not well thought out. Well, the city of Martinez decided that it was well thought out, and they adopted the exact same program and they're running it right now. I think it was a good idea then. It's a good idea now as we move into the colder weather and people are not going to be dining out, perhaps, if we're allowed to get back inside the restaurants. I think this is the kind of program that would have direct benefit to both citizens and businesses downtown. And I hope that later to be talking a little bit about more of what we can do to help our residents. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next question is to Mr. Diabotes. How do you see the city working with the Benicia Unified School District on issues of health and safety of our city's children?
I love that question. As a product of our city schools here in Benicia, I think that the relationship between the city of Benicia and the Benicia Unified School District is important. I know that there's already a great communication between them. I recently was talking to Dr. Young, who I respect greatly. I think he's got a very hard job, especially right now, balancing the needs between the schools, the teachers, the students. But ultimately, I think that relationships with the city involve the school resource officer. Having the school resource officer within our schools is absolutely terrific. I think that working with the teachers to get safely back to school, get our students back in classrooms so that our parents can go back to work and resume some sense of normalcy in their own lives is really key. So ultimately, I think that working together between the city and the school district is really key. As you know, that the city doesn't dictate anything to the school district, but we can absolutely coordinate efforts. We have different facilities available between the school district and the city of Benicia that could be utilized. But ultimately, just being there to support our schools, I think it's really, really important. But that school resource officer within our schools, I think is key. And I thought it was terrific while I was there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Young.
So Jason's right, the school resource officers are important. Our relationship with the school district is important. And there are ways that we can help some of the parents who are struggling with the fact that their kids are still stuck at home and trying to get educated over Zoom. One of the concerns that has been expressed is that one of the digital divide, that there are people in our community who don't necessarily have good internet access. The school district has come forward and offered Chromebooks, one per family, but there's often more than one kid in a family, and one Chromebook isn't able to be shared and have everybody go to school at the same time. So I think one thing the city could do is, with some of our surplus funds that we have right now, offer up extra Chromebooks for families in need who are able or needing additional assistance in the area of internet access. And that could also include subsidizing some of their costs for internet costs through Comcast. I also believe that kids, I'm concerned, I've heard from a lot of parents that they're concerned about the mental health of their kids, that their kids are not able to go out and play, they're not able to do sports, they're not able to go to the playground until very recently. And there is a need to try to normalize as best we can. So I think the challenge for both the school district and the city and the community is, how can we adapt and try to get to some level of normalcy while respecting the fact that the virus is still there. We don't know how long it's going to last, and we need to be cognizant of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Ms. Strawbridge.
Yes, thanks. Well, I'm very, very proud of our schools and our school district. We have one of the best in the state. And it's the reason why people come here, and why a lot of our people that grow up want to come back and raise their kids here. One of the things I did when I got reelected in 2018 was to state the liaison between the city council and school district trustees. Councilmember Young and I serve on that, as appointed by the mayor. And it's been very, very important in solidifying our relationship. We can share information. We get a lot more information from city departments and that as to how we can help the school district. One of the things that I have participated in is Benicia Reads. It is to help our parents, as we're just talking about, be able to understand the importance of reading to their child, and also developing stronger relationships between the schools and our parents. The other thing I sit on is Mary Farmer, Safe Routes to School. Very important that we make sure that our kids can walk to school safely, ride their bikes, and another area that we're seeing development now on 7th Street and Military, and also the crosswalk that's being put in. So it's invaluable for us to continue that strong relationship. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Next question will go to Mr. Young. What steps will you take to enhance the relationship between the police department and our diverse communities?
Thank you. That's a great question. It's obviously been something that we've been talking about for a while. I think the police chief, now the acting city manager, had done a great job in terms of shifting the culture in the police department. But I think there is still a ways to go. One of the things that when I've met with some of the members of the African American community is a story that one guy told me that he has been stopped on more than one occasion by Benicia police. And the first question that is asked of him is, do you have any warrants? Well, I would expect that nobody up here, no white people, have been stopped by the police and have that be the first question asked. I think that exhibits a certain amount of implicit bias and work that still needs to happen. So I think we need to recognize that. I have suggested that the body cameras that the council authorized a while ago, we ought to engage them for every traffic stop. And we should also record the race of every person that we stop so that we know that we are not inherently biased and discriminating in how we are interacting with the community. Clearly, there is not enough diversity in our workforce or in our police department. We do not represent on a proportionate basis the population that we serve. And I think that's what we want to work on. Thanks.
Thanks. Next is Ms. Strawbridge.
Well, next to our schools, our police department is also, as we call it, the best police department in the world. A lot of that has been the culture that Chief Upson, now Eric Upson, our interim city manager, has developed through the years. There is community policing. And what Eric has always said is that he has 28,000 people on his police force. We have over 12 neighborhood watches, groups all throughout our city that help our police department in communicating within their neighborhoods and to each other. This is essential moving forward. And I will say that we had an opportunity last year to district vote to be able to encourage people from all different aspects, all different ethnicities to participate by districts. And I was the only one that voted for that. So we have had opportunity. We are going to have more opportunities because of our interaction with Black Lives Matter, Benicia Black Lives Matter, and looking at how we can diversify through education, through how we hire, how we recruit, and how we encourage people to want to serve in different capacities. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Diabotes.
So I love our police department. Growing up in this town, it's changed a lot. It used to be that if you came into Benicia and you were from outside of Benicia, you were automatically getting pulled over. And that was just about everybody. So I certainly had friends that, would get pulled over just because they were clearly not from Benicia. Honestly, it didn't matter what color they were. So I really support our Chief Upson, who is now our city manager, acting interim, who is fantastic. The things that he's done already, I don't feel that we had a systemic problem with our police department. I think that there were probably in the past some officers that maybe stepped over the line. I think that everybody has learned. I think they've grown. I think that they've changed with the times. But I'd also like to say the body cameras are great. I think the interactions that I'm aware of have all been professional. And I would be open to looking into any allegations of any other problems. But really quick, in probably 1999, I was asked by the city council at the time to create a youth and police picnic, which is something that we should bring back. It will help the interaction between our students, our young people in town, and our police officers. So bringing back the youth and police picnic would be a great way to help our community and our police department to break the ice, which was in fact the name of the picnic back in those days.
Very good, thank you. Next question goes to Ms. Strawbridge, and it is, do you currently consider yourself an ally to communities of color and LGBTQ plus communities? What steps will you take to ensure equal representation for all?
Well, thanks for that question. It's pretty personal to me. I have two gay sons that I am so proud of, and all of the life lessons they've already taught me. So in a lot of ways, I feel like, you know, what's the problem? But there is still issues. There's many things that maybe are going to be challenged moving forward with gay marriage, the whole concept of the legality, the equality. And we've just lost a great champion in Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and her work in equality. So we have done some things. We've made some great moves. We fly the rainbow flag, the LGBTQ flag now in June. We also hosted an event in our city park because the club was not able to use another city's park facility. So our arms and hands and everything is open to diversity in our town. That's what makes us incredibly special. And we need to capitalize on the talents and the people that want to be involved. So more to come with that. And I'm very proud and excited about the future.
Thank you. Mr. Diabotes.
Yeah, you know, I got to tell you, as a restaurant owner, I host routinely a very diverse list of guests. So yeah, I would say I absolutely am an advocate for everybody. And honestly, I don't really care what your sexual preference or your color is. So for me, I think that the best thing that we can do is keep being kind to each other. I don't think that it really matters, honestly, how somebody feels about anything. But these days, we also have issues on political divide. So for me, it's really important to be kind to everybody. I grew up in theater, so you know, my joke has often been I had gay friends before it became popular. You know, my father was a very, very big person in community theater. In fact, even directing shows here in Benicia for Benicia Old Town Theater Group many years ago. So for me, I honestly don't see it. I don't have any bias on anybody except for their personality. So if you're a kind person, you're a nice person, that's all that I really care about. And I really hope that the community as a whole can fully embrace that. I do think that Benicia is probably one of the friendliest places I've ever been in the whole world. And I like to think that in our community, I'm not going to minimize it and say we don't have any negative interactions, but I'd like to say we probably have the fewest negative interactions of any community I've ever seen.
Thank you. Mr. Young.
Yes, thanks. I certainly consider myself to be an ally of the gay and lesbian community. It's the groups that I work with routinely. I don't feel that there's a lot of animus towards gay people in Benicia. I think there's more that we can do, but I think we've made great strides in that direction, and that in general, people feel comfortable here. When it comes to diversity for minorities, I think it's a little bit of a different situation. We have not necessarily matched our rhetoric of being totally inclusive. The community is 70% white and 5% Black and 10% Asian and 10% Latino. But when you look at the city workforce, it's much whiter than that. When you look at our boards and commissions, it's much whiter than that. And I don't think that's a deliberate thing, but it is a fact. And in order to change that balance, we're going to have to be more aggressive in our outreach, in our recruitment for not only city employees, but also city boards and commissions. Because it's the city boards and commissions that are the ramp to allow people to move up to elected office. And I think that we have seen a whole bunch of very articulate young people of color that are exercising their interests and demands to be, for us to become more inclusive, and we should be listening to those requests.
All right, thank you. And next is Mr. Diabotes. You will start question 5. How do you foresee the city improving its financial situation and maintaining its infrastructure?
So I think it's really key that we diversify our revenue base. And I know that during the candidates for council, that was a big topic. We have key city assets that we need to properly utilize. One of the things I've been talking about a lot lately is the use of our 1902 train depot. It was put there in 1902, built originally in Banta, California. I think we're underutilizing it. I think that there are ways that we can monetize that, right? So we can use private investments, create a bar and restaurant there is the idea that I've been pushing, but I'm open to anybody else's idea that could generate some great revenue. And the city as a landlord would generate $400,000, $500,000 a year, potentially just in the lease rate. So I think that would be a key. Plus, that would help to build up the economic footprint of our waterfront. We barely utilize our historic downtown waterfront. It'd be really nice to see that we build that up. The Sino property, the 526-acre development, in 2018, in the last campaign season, everybody was talking about it. Nobody talked about it since. Every year, every cycle, campaign cycle, we talk about the Sino property, but we've never done anything about it after that. So I'm kind of tired of all the talk. I'd like to see us actually focus and start the communication. We haven't been willing to talk to them as a city. So we need to do those type of things. So there's a lot more. That's a huge topic for me. We could talk about that for an hour by itself.
Thank you. Mr. Young.
Yeah, I don't know that 90 seconds is enough to talk about both infrastructure and finance. So let me talk about the finance side. And maybe we can get back to the infrastructure later. Clearly, we do need to diversify our economic base. We are too reliant on Valero and the companies that service Valero. They are an important player for sure, but they don't provide sales tax directly. Their main contribution is property tax in terms of contributions to the city finances. So I think we have to be open to changes in terms of growth and encouraging growth. And there are two ways we can do it. One is to talk about expanding the size of downtown, perhaps adding, changing our zoning and our downtown plan to allow places that are now residentially zoned to allow for commercial development. And that would serve two things, not only to bring in commercial uses, but also the people who live in these houses near downtown that are becoming, in some cases, tired of the noise and the traffic. They're looking for an opportunity to get out. This might give them that opportunity and allow for more development. Jason mentioned the Sino property. The Sino actually approached me and I met with them a while ago about this. I talked about my vision for the property. I don't know that I'm down to 7 seconds, so maybe I can get back to it later. But I think that's clearly the place that we have to look at for extended growth opportunities.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Strawbridge.
Could you repeat the question again?
Sure. How do you foresee the city improving its financial situation and maintaining its infrastructure?
Council has already made some changes as far as doing some investments, especially with our roads. We have now put nearly $11 million into our roads, and that is going to make a big difference in infrastructure improvements. A lot of these roads are a gateway into our town, and people are really expecting to see some improvements there. We need to become open for business town. And for too long, we have not been open for business. We put businesses through a bunch of different rigmaroles as far as permitting and not getting communication. So we are investing more in our community development department. We are making some changes in our finance department to bring those departments up to speed, that we now become the place you want to come and do business. I have had a store now for 15 years. I previously had a store back in the late 80s and early 90s. And I know what it's like to have a business in a small town. So we need to encourage entrepreneurship. It's been exciting to see new businesses coming, and we need to build on that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. We have a question from the audience, which goes to Mr. Young. I got it here. CalPERS has not hit their 7% return goal. What are your plans for paying future pension and retirement deficits, as well as developing a plan to pay the current year's debt?
Well, pensions are probably one of the biggest looming problems that the city faces. And we have established a pension reserve fund. We are going to add another $2 million to it. We decided just the other night. But our obligations are significant. What people need to understand is that our pension obligations are not particularly different than any other city or counties. This, the deals that the previous councils made to allow for enhanced benefits for employees are great for employees, whether it's coming home to roost, and we have significant challenges. But we cannot just say we're going to not pay those bills. We are obligations. And so the fix has to actually happen at the state level and through state court actions, because Vallejo and the county and every other entity has the same problem, and it's going to take a massive fix on a much bigger basis than just Benicia.
Thank you. Ms. Strawbridge, would you like me to reread the question?
I think I get it. It's not an easy answer to a not very easy question. As Mr. Young said, we're along with other cities throughout California struggling with this. The advantage that Benicia has is we have been making some substantial investments in our pension funds. We are in much better shape than other cities, but we are also going to need to rely on the state and our assembly member, our senator, state senator, to help us with this transition. It could very well disrupt our complete budget if it comes due like tomorrow. Luckily, it doesn't. So we need to be creative, and we need to look at all of our options, but we are going to need the help from the state in order to address this.
Thank you. Mr. Diabotes.
So when I hear the comment that we have surplus funds, this is what makes me nervous. We don't, in fact, have surplus funds. We may have extra funds in one account, but clearly we have a huge unfunded pension liability. So it's a responsibility. I'm not looking to anybody to save us from it, but ourselves. I believe in 2013, there were major changes done to how we fund our employees, how employees are paid and compensated. So ultimately, it's an obligation. We can't just shrug off that responsibility. We've got to keep funding our pension reserve fund. We need to realize that we do not, in fact, have surplus funds. These are funds that really we need to build up as much money as we can so that we can cover these obligations, but also keep our city running without cutting back services and hopefully without raising any more fees.
Thank you. Thank you. And another question from the audience, which will go to Ms. Strawbridge first. Last year, a zoning ordinance was passed 3-2 by the current council that prohibits future retail cannabis businesses from locations within Benicia, except for the industrial park. If Measure D results indicate that Benicia voters want additional retail cannabis business in Benicia, would you agree to begin a two-step process to change the restrictive zoning?
Okay, thank you for that question. Many of you know where I've stood on dispensaries in our town. I don't think it's a good fit. However, we have one that's going to be opening pretty soon on N Street. It is in a commercial building, but unfortunately it's in a neighborhood of families. So there are a lot of concerns that I have along with the residents in that area on the impacts. We don't know financially what is this dispensary going to generate. We don't know what traffic mitigation, traffic impact is going to be, and also safety. So when this came up, the ballot measure, I was very vocal about the fact that I think it was premature. We need to see how this first and only dispensary performs before we to bring this before the voters. We owe that to our voters, just to have them get that information. Thanks.
Thank you. And next is Mr. Diabotes.
So when it comes to cannabis, I routinely talk to people within our community that are on both sides of it. So Measure D is advisory only. So it's just the city's way to go out and get input from the community. You know, I'm always willing to have a conversation. I'm not a big proponent of cannabis. I'm not a big opponent of cannabis. In fact, I think I'm poised really well to hear both sides of the topic. Because again, I have a lot of friends and I know a lot of people that are really evenly split on both sides of this issue. I do think that we need to maintain our buffer zones. I think we need to keep it out of our downtown, and I would not support putting it in any residential areas. Aside from that, let's have a conversation. I mean, listen, there is going to be some tax revenue to come from that. So there are some benefits from there. And aside from the fact that I do not support the youth using marijuana at all, an adult, you get to do what you want. This is America.
All right, thank you. Mr. Young.
So when Prop 64 was on the ballot in 2016, it passed by 63% in Benicia. And a lot of people thought that meant we were going to get dispensaries. What the law said is that cities had the right to decide whether or not to have dispensaries. So we went through a long 2-year process of coming up with some very strict rules to allow businesses. We allowed up to 2 businesses at that time to apply, and they each paid $20,000 to apply. And the city was very slow in processing their application. And in the middle of, while it was still going on and we had 9 applicants, there was a new council elected and they decided that they didn't like the existing thing. They changed the rules in the middle of the game, which is inherently unfair to the businesses who had followed all the rules. It was only when we threatened with a lawsuit that we came back with this compromise to allow one, but put these buffers in to never allow another. I made a pledge on Measure D that if the voters said that they didn't want additional dispensaries, even though I supported them, I would adhere to the will of the voters. And I hope all council members would do the same.
Thank you. So I don't think this one's going to take a minute, but another one from the audience, first to Mr. Diabotes. Will you hold regular office hours so residents can talk with you?
Great question. Yes, I would absolutely support that. I will do that. I do it now, as a matter of fact. I'm down here at my restaurant on First Street in our downtown every day. I typically take my coffee in the late morning around 11 a.m. and I get to talk to people as they walk by. I get to talk to tourists. I get to talk to our local residents, and it's fascinating. And I hear lots of different things. So I don't feel like I'm in an echo chamber when I get to talk to many community members and hear their input. So it's we get into some great conversations. Some of them are challenging for me, but I love to listen to our community. So yeah, I would absolutely hold regular office hours, but I'm doing it right now. So you can stop by downtown pretty much any day around 11 a.m. and talk to me. Plus, I like to go up to the city park on Saturdays. So lately I've been doing a lot of that. I missed last Saturday, but I'll be there this Saturday. Happy to talk to our community anytime.
All right, thank you. Next is Mr. Young.
Yes, certainly I would continue office hours. I would do more than just the 1 hour a day, 1 hour a week that the current mayor is doing. There is an office for the mayor. If I'm elected, my wife will be happy to have me out of the house and in another room. And I would intend to work in that office on a regular basis. So I would be available much more often. The other thing I want to do, though, is offer up to employees to come talk to me and give me their ideas on how the city programs could be improved, either from an efficiency point of view or a reduction in cost perspective. I think our employees are really good. I think they understand what's going on, and they have a perhaps better understanding of how the city could operate more efficiently than perhaps even directors or certainly council members. So I would look for that kind of interaction on a regular basis.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Strawbridge.
Yeah, thanks. So I think we need to think even bigger. I would like to see that the mayor has their own Facebook page, information about what things are happening, having our residents be able to contact through social media or also through our emails. I think it's great to be able to meet with our residents, but oftentimes it's doesn't work within their schedule. I think right now it's from 6 to 7 on Mondays. So I think that the more access we have to our residents, the better. I too, like Mr. Diabotes, have a store on First Street. And just yesterday, I had a gentleman come by and say, "Which one of you is Christina?" So found out he's a Midwesterner, has lived here a number of years. And it was really great to just be able to talk to him about what his feelings are and what things he's looking forward for in the future. So yeah, the more communication, the better.
All right, thank you. And it looks like this will be our last question. First to Mr. Young. What do you know about how the police handled DACA residents and other immigrants?
Well, I know that the council had a policy that we passed a while ago that we would not be cooperating with ICE and we would not be turning immigrants over who had been picked up for minor violations. I'm sure that's still in effect. I think that is the case. I'm not aware of concerns, frankly, of DACA kids or immigrants in general who have had interactions with the police that has turned into any problem with immigration. And I would continue to hope that that would be the case.
All right, thank you. And next to Ms. Strawbridge.
Yeah, I'm unaware of any issues. I know that we did put forward a proclamation, a resolution about being, open to DACA. I feel like, there's so much legislation now, like ping pong going back and forth. But again, this gets back to the culture that our police department has developed, and it's only being strengthened with our interim city manager.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Diabotes.
So I'm going to echo exactly what I just heard from Christina and from Steve. I'm not aware that we have any issues with this in our community. However, that being said, I will tell you personally, I like law enforcement. So if we have violent criminals, I don't particularly care what their status is. I would want them handed over, and I want them out of our community. We don't need any more felons or criminals hanging out in our community, violent criminals especially, hanging out within our community. I want to keep our town safe.
All right, thank you. Well, that I think concludes our question for this evening. And I want to thank you all for a very interesting forum. Back to you, Gail.
Yeah. Niles, you have to let me off video. Or Susan. Uh-oh. Well, I can't start the video because the host has stopped it. Just a minute, please. So you
I don't
won't.
think I have that option. Susan must control.
Okay, so, yep, okay. So I'll just be doing it without you seeing my lips move. How about that? You can hear me all?
Yes.
Okay, so once again, would like to thank, on behalf of the League of Women Voters, the AAUW. Wait, now I've got it. Okay, here we are. So on behalf of the League of Women Voters, the AAUW in Carquinez Village, I would like to thank all the candidates for making time to come here tonight. Running for office is difficult, and we admire anyone who is willing to run and serve their community by being an elected official.
Okay, excuse me a sec. You know what? I think I skipped over
Oh,
closing.
closing. Yep, thank you. That's
Sorry
why
about
Ally
that.
showing me 3 fingers. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Let's
thanks,
try
Ally.
again.
Okay, so closing statements, and we're going to do those in the reverse order of the opening statements. And if I can get back to that part, I will tell you what that means. So first is Mr. Young.
Thank you. So I'd like to start where Christina started. And I appreciated the fact that she denounced the negative campaigning that's happening by Valero and the Working Families PAC. Of course, I'm the target of that, so it would be easy for me to denounce it as well. I haven't really said anything about it, but I have had supporters who have been very upset by the tenor and the nature of those ads. And it's not right that personal attacks are directed towards Christina. I don't believe that she had a role in those particular ads, because if she had, they would be better ads than they were. I don't think those ads are doing her any favors, frankly. They are not well done. They have a lot of falsehoods in them. But I don't believe she's corrupt. I don't believe that she has a role in this. And in a way, she is a victim of those ads as much as I am. Well, maybe not as much as I am, but in a different way. The other thing I want to say is some pledges I have taken as a candidate, not to take any corporate money, not to take any union money, to be open, to be transparent, to answer every question that is put to me, that I'm going to follow the will of the voters, as we talked about, having to do with Measure D, that I'll continue to be active on social media. I think it's important that the mayor be out there and be willing to engage with the community and act as a spokesman for what the city is trying to do and what some of the issues are. I've been really impressed by the community so much since this pandemic has started. I was active in forming a group called Benicia Strong, which was started out as a bunch of churches who were involved in social actions and feeding people. It included Northgate Church and St. Paul's and Heritage Presbyterian and Community Congregational. And then we added some other entities like Food is Free, Solano and Heather Perini, and they are doing some tremendous stuff. And when there is a need, people are stepping up. And it has been so inspiring to me to see this happen with the people in Benicia. I know this has been a divisive campaign. It's unfortunate, but it'll be over soon. And if I am elected, I understand that it's going to be necessary to try to pull people together. And mayors on their own cannot make things happen. You need to have 3 votes on the city council to accomplish anything. And I believe that I have the type of experience and temperament and understanding of the issues where I can bring people together and move this community forward. We have large challenges, but with a new city manager and a new city council, I think we can certainly make progress and make significant inroads into our challenges. So I want to thank the League for the opportunity, and I ask the viewers for your support on November 3rd. Thank you.
Next is Mr. Diabotes.
So I want to also echo what Christina and Steve said. I want to thank everyone that has served our community on council. I'd also like to thank all of those that are running to serve our community on council, including the mayor's, the mayor's race. As a Benicia business owner, I've always been close to the campaign process, but this is my first time entering the arena myself. It's very different. It's a very different perspective. It's a lot of work, and I truly appreciate the commitment made by all of the candidates. So in terms of negative campaigning, I've chosen to stay completely positive myself, and I will attack no one. I'm really happy for everybody that's willing to do it. So now that I'm running for office, I have even more appreciation for what they go through. I'd like to thank all the candidates for the willingness to serve our community. And I would encourage everybody else to show their appreciation as well. Growing up in Benicia was one of the best gifts from my parents. Benicia was recently ranked 17th safest city in California. With all that our community has gone through with COVID-19, we will have a lot of work and hard decisions ahead if we want to keep Benicia the fantastic little town that I grew up in. But we do have some smart development that we need to undertake. We have nearly an $8 million budget forecasted shortfall city revenues. So we don't have a surplus. And I really would like to see people stop talking about a surplus. we have some tough budgeting issues ahead. But there are a lot of opportunities for us to improve. The city of Benicia needs to implement a business and recruiting retention program that'll help our businesses stay in Benicia and recruit more great businesses, which will create jobs and add to our diverse revenue basis. We need to better utilize our key city assets, such as our downtown waterfront, improve our community events, making our downtown a draw for tourists and our community alike. We need to find ways to improve our road repairs, such as creating our own road repair crew and leasing our own road repair equipment. 46% of our roads are still in poor or failing conditions. We have a $30 million problem, but we only put about $1.2 million a year towards it. 27% of Measure C is all we're putting towards our roads. I'd like to see a cap put on Measure C for what can go to operating expenses. You know, and it's interesting, in 2018, we were talking about water and roads in 2018. What have we done over the last 2 years to improve that? Why are we still talking about the same problems? So clearly we need to reduce our water and sewer fees, and at the very least do something for our fixed income seniors. So if we can't do something, you know, for the community as a whole, I do believe we have an obligation, and I know this was also a campaign issue in 2018, which was never followed up on. So really, for our seniors, we've got to do something for them. So as mayor, I will vastly improve the way we communicate with our community.
Trade, your time is up, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strawbridge.
Yes, thanks. Thank you all. Thank you for the League of Women Voters, the American Association University of Women, and the Carquinez Village for putting this forum on. We didn't have that many forums this time, and so it's very appreciative, and to have it early, because I believe our citizens are voting now. They are voting early. They want to make sure their vote counts. I would like to just respond to some of the things Jason said, in that we have put on over $9 million to roads. Now we just added another $2 million to roads. So we are investing in infrastructure. We are not going to be able to reduce water rates. We just had a report that shows the next 30 years that we're going to be $300 million in need of water, where water comes from, and how we develop it. The good news is we have an amazing public works department, a great director in Will Turbo, and they are looking at innovation in how we can partner with the city of Vallejo and the county, Solano County, in helping us with some of these costs. So I believe that we have an amazing staff. They have and are looking at all opportunities within our city to keep us a full service city. And it's important because Councilmember Young has brought up our library and maybe regionalizing it with the county. This is really an important issue because it is the heart of our community. And the people of Benicia would not be happy if it was merged with the county, and it doesn't make dollar cents. So we need to continue these services. People have moved here because we're a safe city. We do not want to regionalize our fire and police because we want them when we need them. So we need to look at economic development. As I said, we need to look at business opportunities. As somebody that helped with Councilmember Young on cannabis out in the industrial park, we added many of the things that are important out there as far as delivery, micro businesses, and helped reduce the fees in order for us to be more competitive. That may be a great opportunity for us. So we need to be business friendly. We need to heal the divide within our community. It's gone way over the edge. And I'm hoping that my ability to bring people together like I have for the last 35 years I'll be the person to do that. So I'm asking you to elect me as your next mayor of Benicia. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the candidates. It's been a great forum, and pass it back to Gail.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'm not going to read what I read already. I'll read the next part or say the next part. But I do want to thank you again, all the candidates, for coming and being here. And we'd like to ask the people who are watching, the audience, to, if you have additional questions or concerns, we ask you to reach out to the candidates directly. And I would like to also encourage you to use Voters Edge, the California League website that has nonpartisan information about the candidates, propositions, and measures. Go to votersedge.org and type in your street address and zip code to find your candidate choices. When you get there, you just click on the candidate's name or face, and their top 3 priorities, profession, will come up. There's a series of questions that the league has formulated that are similar to these that they've answered as well. So there's good information there if you go, and it's free. Okay, the recording of this forum will be posted on the League of Women Voters of Solano County's YouTube channel with the link on our website. The copyright for this forum belongs to the League of Women Voters of Solano County, which reserves all rights to the recording of this forum. No portion of the contents of this forum may be reproduced or otherwise used without prior written consent from the League of Women Voters. No portion of this recording may be used to promote one candidate or oppose another in any way. Additionally, no portion of this forum may be used to imply that the League of Women Voters endorses any candidate. If the recording of this forum is to be used, it must be used in its entirety. We felt strongly that we did not want the pandemic to prevent voters from learning about the candidates who are running for office. And so I thank you again for coming, and also for making the comment that you are wanting, all of you are wanting to unite our community. I appreciate that personally. Our virtual event is complicated and takes a great deal of time and effort to create, and there are many behind the scenes that make today's forum happen. We would like to thank Niles Metters, Julie Hartford, our Vice President, Sandy Curry, Craig Patterson, Rami Muth, Ali Desiderio, our timer, Barbara Hausman, our chat manager, and Susan Newhouse, our technical coordinator and president of Carquinez Village. We welcome your feedback and hope you will take a moment to leave a comment in the chat box on your YouTube. This information will help us know the aspects of the forum that worked well and where we can improve. Thank you for attending, and remember that democracy is not a spectator sport. Make a plan to vote on or before November 3rd. Thank you. Good night.